science is as simple as a 3-year-old child noticing and asking why the sky is blue, and as complex as predicting and understanding gravitational waves. Today, I'll be talking about discoveries made in the last 100 years within the disciplines that will encompass the symposium this year. I had many discoveries to pick from, but I will admit to a personal bias for those discoveries that contributed to my career as a biochemist or ones that I just found fascinating. So let's get started. The first area is archaeology. Lucy, the 3.2 million year old Australopithecus afarensis example, represents a significant stage in the evolutionary journey of humanity. She is often considered a key transitional figure between early primates and later hominids that would eventually evolve into modern humans. Lucy's skeletal structure, particularly her pelvis and leg bones, suggest that she was capable of bipedal locomotion, a hallmark of human evolution. This ability to walk upright marked a critical adaptation, freeing the hands for tool use, carrying objects, and other activities that would later define human ingenuity and culture. In the grand narrative of human evolution, Lucy belongs to a period when early hominids were adapting to life on the ground, moving away from the primarily arboreal existence. This shift was likely driven by environmental changes, such as the expansion of the savannas in Africa, which necessitated new survival strategies. Lucy and her kind were not yet toolmakers in the sense of later Homo sapiens or Homo species, but their bipedalism laid the groundwork for the eventual development of more advanced cognitive and physical traits. From the perspective of spiritual and philosophical teachings, Lucy represents an early stage in the long and purposeful unfolding of life on Earth. This evolutionary process is seen as part of a divine plan, where physical and biological development prepares the way for the eventual emergence of beings capable of moral reasoning, spiritual insights, and communion with higher realities. Lucy's existence underscores the gradual and progressive nature of this journey, highlighting the interconnectedness of all life and the intricate design underlying the evolution of humanity. 2.2 million years separate Lucy from Andon Infanta. 2.2 million years to evolve from walking upright to beings that had brain development and mental capacity to make choices that resulted in thought adjuster indwelling. Evolution is slow, but sure. The next discovery was that of the Dead Sea Scrolls. With their profound impact on understanding ancient Jewish thought and early Christianity, resonates with themes explored in the teachings. The scrolls' content, including biblical manuscripts, apocryphal works, and sectarian text, aligns with the emphasis on the evolution of religious thought, and the diversity of spiritual practices during the Second Temple period. The teachings highlight the progression of religious ideas, such as the transition from tribal deities to a universal understanding of God, which parallels the theological developments revealed by the scrolls. Furthermore, the scrolls' insights into messianic expectations and apocalyptic thinking reflects the complex interplay of hope and prophecy that shaped Jewish and early Christian beliefs. The teachings discuss how these expectations often centered on a deliverer who would fulfill both spiritual and nationalistic aspirations, a concept that influenced the reception of Jesus' mission. This mirrors the sectarian perspectives found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which provide context for understanding the diverse interpretations of messianic prophecies. The preservation of these ancient texts also underscore the enduring importance of scriptural transmission and the role of inspired writings in guiding spiritual growth. The teachings emphasize the dynamic nature of truth and its adaptation across ages, which is evident in the textual stability and variations revealed by the scrolls. This continuity and evolution of sacred text highlight the interplay between divine inspiration and human interpretation in the unfolding of religious history. Next is the discovery of Göbekli Tepe. With its monumental architecture and spiritual significance, aligns with the teachings in the Urantia book on the evolution of human civilization and the role of religion in fostering societal development. The Urantia book emphasizes the gradual progression of human societies from primitive stages to more organized and spiritually motivated communities. It highlights how early humans, even in their rudimentary stages, were capable of profound spiritual expression and cooperative efforts that laid the groundwork for advancing civilization. The teachings discuss the transition from nomadic lifestyles to settled agricultural societies, emphasizing that such shifts are often driven by deeper cultural and spiritual motivations. This resonates with the idea that Göbekli Tepe, a ceremonial site predating agriculture, may have catalyzed the development of farming practices to support larger gatherings and religious activities. The text also underscores the Urantia book text also underscores the importance of cooperation and planning in early human achievements, which is evident in the sophisticated construction and organization required to build Göbekli Tepe. Moreover, the Urantia book explores the interplay between spiritual aspirations and material advancements, suggesting that religion often precedes and inspires significant cultural and societal changes. Göbekli Tepe's ceremonial nature, devoid of practical habitation, exemplifies how spiritual motivations can drive monumental achievements, challenging the assumption that material needs alone dictate societal progress. Our next area is astronomy. I chose this picture because this facility is not located very far from where I live. This is the Hanford observation, which actually observes and reports finding gravitational waves. I will tell you there is actually an app you can go to and download on your phone, and every time they think they get a gravitational wave, you get a notice, which is really kind of cool. And then they also give you where they think it was located, and then within 24 hours, you will get a notice as to whether they think it was a real or a false detection that they got. But anyway, you too can visit this. This is in Hanford, Washington, my state, where I live currently, and it is now open, and you too can go and take a visit and see what goes on there. So anyway, that's the reason I chose this particular backdrop for looking at astronomy. So let's continue on. The Urantia book offers profound insights into the nature of the universe, its expansion, and the phenomenon that aligns with modern scientific discoveries such as the expansion of the universe, gravitational waves, and the discovery of exoplanets. While the text predates many of these scientific breakthroughs, its cosmological framework provides a fascinating perspective on these topics. Regarding the expansion of the universe, the text describes a concept known as space respiration, which suggests that the universe undergoes cycles of expansion and contraction. This rhythmic motion of space itself is distinct from the movement of celestial bodies within it and implies a dynamic quality to the cosmos that challenges the conventional view of a uniformly accelerating expansion. This idea aligns with the broader understanding of the universe in motion, though it introduces a cyclical element that is not currently part of mainstream cosmology. The expansive phase of space respiration started about the time of Andon and Fanta. It is now at about the midpoint. Humans on Urantia have only lived during expansion. Our astronomy and cosmology can only be interpreted by our observations. The detection of gravitational waves, which confirmed Einstein's prediction about ripples in spacetime caused by massive cosmic events, resonates with the Urantia book's emphasis on the interplay of motion, gravity, and space. The text speaks of the intricate balance maintained by the universal absolute in coordinating gravitational forces and spatial tensions, suggesting a cosmic mechanism that ensures stability and order across vast expanses. This perspective underscores the interconnectedness of physical force and their role in the universe's structural integrity. As for exoplanets and the search for life beyond Earth, the Urantia book describes the universe teeming with life and organized into a vast administrative structure. It speaks of countless inhabited worlds within the 7 superuniverses and hints at the ongoing creation and stabilization of new galaxies and planetary systems in the outer space levels. This vision of a populated and an evolving cosmos aligns with the discovery of exoplanets and the growing recognition of the potential for life elsewhere in the universe. The Urantia book teachings, provide a framework for understanding the universe as a living, dynamic entity, governed by divine principles and filled with opportunities for discovery and growth. They invite reflection on humanity's place within this grand cosmic design and encourage a deeper exploration of both scientific and spiritual truths. Our next area is going to be biophysics. If you're not familiar with biophysics, let me help by defining it a little bit. It integrates concepts and techniques from physics, biology, chemistry, mathematics, and engineering. Biophysicists study phenomena like force, energy, and dynamics to explain how biological components work. The Urantia book offers profound insights into the nature of life, energy, and the intricate processes that govern biological systems, which can be related to modern scientific advancements such as X-ray crystallography, ion channels, and single molecule techniques, all three of these had profound influence on my personal scientific career. In relation to X-ray crystallography and the understanding of protein structures, the text discusses the fundamental role of energy and matter at the atomic and subatomic levels. It describes how X-rays, as a form of energy, interact with matter, emphasizing their role in breaking down atomic structures under extreme conditions, such as within suns. This understanding of X-rays as a great leveler of atomic existence aligns metaphorically with their modern applications in revealing the intricate structures of proteins like myoglobin and hemoglobin by penetrating and scattering through crystalline forms. Regarding ion channels and membrane biophysics, the Urantia book highlights the importance of the saline environment in which life originated. It explains that the internal salt solutions of organisms mirroring ancient oceanic conditions are critical for cellular processes, including the transmission of electrical signals in nerves and the regulation of fluid balance. This directly correlates with the modern understanding of ion channels as essential components in cellular communication and nerve conduction, as they regulate the movement of ions across membranes to generate electrical impulses. For single molecule techniques, which allow the study of individual proteins and DNA mechanisms, the text discussion of the complexity of life and the intricate design of cellular processes resonates deeply. It describes the work of life carriers in designing a life with immense complexity, involving countless phases and features to ensure adaptability and functionality. This perspective underscores the precision and sophistication inherent in biological systems, which modern single molecule techniques are beginning to uncover in unprecedented detail. The Urantia Book teachings not only provide a spiritual and philosophical framework for understanding the universe's complexity, but also invite reflection on the harmony between scientific discovery and the deeper truths of existence. Our next area is computer science. We've actually lived through and witnessed this in our lifetimes of all of since most of this has happened in the latter half of the last century and is continuing. So we've actually experienced the development of a lot of this in real time. The Urantia Book provides a fascinating framework for understanding the interconnectedness of communication, intelligence, and the evolution of systems, which can be metaphorically related to the development of the Internet, the World Wide Web, and the advancements in artificial intelligence, such as machine learning and neural networks. The concept of reflectivity in the Urantia Book is particularly relevant to the development of the Internet and the TCP/IP protocols. Reflectivity is described as a sophisticated cosmic mechanism that enables instantaneous communication and information exchange across vast distances in the universe. This system connects different administrative levels, ensures effective governance and coordination. It mirrors the principles of packet switching networks and standardized protocols that form the backbone of the Internet, facilitating seamless and efficient global communication. The World Wide Web, with its user-friendly interface and transformative impact on accessibility, can be likened to the Urantia Book's emphasis on the dissemination of knowledge and the integration of diverse systems. The text underscores the importance of centralized yet universally accessible systems for the coordination of information, akin to how HTTP, HTML, and URLs revolutionized the way information is shared and accessed globally. Machine learning and neural networks, which enable AI to recognize patterns and solve complex problems, resonate with the Urantia Book's portrayal of the adjutant mind spirits and their role in fostering intellectual and spiritual growth. These spirits, such as those of wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, are described as facilitating the evolution of intelligent life by enabling beings to process and integrate information effectively. This parallels the way neural networks mimic human cognitive processes to learn and adapt. These connections highlight the Urantia Book's profound insights into the principles of communication, intelligence, and system integration, offering a spiritual and philosophical perspective on the technological achievements that shape our modern world. Our next area is cosmology. The Urantia Book offers profound insights into the structure and dynamics of the universe, which can be related to modern scientific concepts such as dark matter, dark energy, and cosmic inflation. While these scientific discoveries postdate the text, postdates the text, its description of cosmic phenomenon resonates intriguingly with these ideas. The concept of dark islands of space in the Urantia Book provokes a fascinating parallel to the modern understanding of dark matter. These dark islands are described as massive, non-luminous celestial bodies that exert significant gravitational influence, stabilizing nearby systems and contributing to the equilibrium of the cosmos. This aligns with the role of dark matter in contemporary astronomy, which is understood to account for the unseen mass that influences galaxy rotation curves and large-scale cosmic structures. Regarding dark energy, the Urantia Book discusses the interplay of gravity and anti-gravity forces in maintaining cosmic equilibrium. It describes how energy and matter undergo continuous cycles of transformation, with gravity acting as a consolidating force and anti-gravity as a dispersing influence. This dynamic interplay may metaphorically echo the concept of dark energy, which is theorized to drive the accelerating expansion of the universe. Cosmic inflation, which explains the rapid early expansion of the universe and its large-scale uniformity, finds a conceptual counterpart in the Urantia book's portrayal of the master universe vast orderly structure. The text emphasizes the role of divine architects and energy regulators in shaping the cosmos, suggesting a purposeful and coordinated expansion that ensures balance and harmony across immense scales. Remember, we're at the midpoint, and we have only experienced expansion while we've had humans on this planet. These teachings provide a spiritual and philosophical framework for understanding the universe's complexity and order, inviting reflection on the interplay between scientific discovery and deeper cosmic truths. Our next area is genetics and molecular biology. I chose these three because all three of these had a profound influence on the science that I did during my career, and in fact, much of what I ended up doing could not have been accomplished without PCR or recombinant DNA. So, the Urantia book provides a unique perspective on the origins and development of life, which can be metaphorically connected to modern advancements in genetics and biotechnology, such as recombinant DNA technology, the polymerase chain reaction, and the Human Genome Project. In relation to recombinant DNA technology, the text discusses the concept of life plasm and its role in the biological upliftment of humanity. The infusion of Adamic life plasm, described as containing superior genetic material, was intended to enhance the health, intellect, and evolutionary potential of the native races. This mirrors the modern ability to manipulate DNA to introduce desirable traits or correct genetic deficiencies, highlighting the transformative power of genetic intervention. The polymerase chain reaction, which revolutionized the ability to amplify DNA sequences, can be conceptually linked to the Urantia book's emphasis on the intricate and purposeful design of life. The text describes the meticulous planning and execution involved in the creation of life, suggesting a deep understanding of biological processes and parallels the precision and innovation seen in PCR technology. This method's ability to replicate DNA aligns with the book's portrayal of life's inherent capacity for self-replication and adaptation. The Human Genome Project, which mapped the entire human genetic blueprint, resonates with the Urantia book's detailed account of evolutionary history and genetic diversity of humanity. The text emphasizes the importance of genetic variations and the role of higher beings in guiding the development of life. This aligns with the modern understanding of the genome as a repository of life's complexity and potential, offering insights into human evolution and the interconnectedness of all life forms. These parallels between the teachings and modern science achievements invite reflection on the profound interconnectedness of spiritual and material realities. They suggest that the exploration of genetics and biotechnology can deepen our appreciation for the complexity and intentionality of life, fostering a greater sense of wonder and responsibility in our stewardship of these powerful tools. The Urantia book tells us that we are unique. Now, biologically, we are beginning to understand just how unique each individual actually is. The field of epigenetics has discovered that our genome changes throughout our lifetime. Even identical twins do not stay identical in their genome after birth. This has brought the understanding that personalized medicine will allow for vast improvements in treatments and outcomes in the future. And our last, but definitely not least, area is quantum physics. The Urantia book provides a rich cosmological and metaphysical framework that can be conceptually linked to the foundational principles of quantum mechanics, including the idea of quantization, non-locality, and the wave-particle duality, as well as the broader implications of quantum phenomena such as entanglement and topological phases. Regarding the foundation of quantum mechanics, the text discusses the quantization of energy, emphasizing the energy exchange occurs in discrete units or quanta. This principle ensures the stability and predictability of matter, reflecting an intelligent design behind the universe's physical laws. The Urantia book also describes the wave-like behavior of energy as being determined by the dimensions of material structures, which resonates with the wave-particle duality central to quantum theory. Bell's theorem and the experimental confirmation of quantum non-locality, which demonstrates the interconnectedness of particles across vast distances, align with the Urantia book's portrayal of a universe where energy and matter are intricately interconnected. The text suggests that the interplay of forces and energies is governed by higher cosmic principles, ensuring harmony and coherence across the vastness of creation. The discovery of the quantum Hall effect and the exploration of topological phases revealed new layers of quantum phenomenon, which the Urantia book might metaphorically address through its description of the complex interaction of automatons, electrons, and other fundamental units of matter. These interactions are depicted as being influenced by cosmic forces and governed by precise laws that maintain the balance and order of the universe. Quantum entanglement and its application to cryptography and computing reflect the Urantia book's emphasis on the interconnectedness of all things, both material and spiritual. The text describes a universe where relationships and interactions are fundamental to its structure, suggesting that even the smallest units of matter are part of a grand unified design. The teachings provide a philosophical and spiritual lens through which to view the profound discoveries of quantum mechanics, inviting deeper reflection on the nature of reality and the underlying principles that govern the cosmos. So these discoveries illuminated some of humanity's greatest intellectual achievements. But each breakthrough opens new questions while fundamentally transforming our understanding of existence itself.
Thank you, Marjorie. That was great. I'm not sure if I'm sure there are fields you didn't touch on, but we could go forever with the ones that you did, I'm sure. Uh, who has questions or comments or something to kick us off? Hey, Rick.
Margie, I got a question. If I understood you correctly, you said that our genome, which I take to mean our DNA, changes over our lifetime. Is that, if I got that right, does that affect our aging, or is that caused by aging, or does that have any impact on like our life expectancy and that sort of thing?
Well, they're certainly looking at these changes that happen to our DNA. There's you get methyl groups that attach to it. I mean, this is deep chemistry, or you can get oxidation of parts of the genome. And they think that some of these things that absolutely have to do with aging. There's certainly research in that particular area. But you can, there have been identical twin studies for years. I mean, Sweden had one of the biggest ones, and for a long time, they couldn't understand people that were, that were born as identical twins, but yet, as they got older, they obviously diverged from each other, even if their environment might have been the same, very much the same. But just very small differences in things, exposure to a toxin, exposure to a real traumatic event. Just many things can have minor, what appears to be minor changes on your DNA, but they in the lifelong that your DNA is going to be being presented to the world, it does, how your physical being is going to respond to those things can be different from your, for example, your identical twin. I can give you an example from life, a personal example. My father was an identical twin. In fact, he and his brother were in 1921 at the World's Fair, judged the most identical twins in the United States.
Wow.
And even after my uncle passed away, people would still ask my dad if he was his brother or himself. They never could figure out who was who. My dad had a heart attack at 47, and then 6 weeks later, his identical twin had a heart attack, but his twin died. My father went on and lived into his 70s, but my uncle had rheumatic fever when he was around 18 years old. My father did not. Okay. So though their genome had been very, very similar, my uncle's genetics, obviously the changes on his DNA predisposed him to an earlier death than my father. Now that's a pretty crude example when we talk about it, but it's pretty graphic in that sense. And these things have been noticed in twins for a long, long time. And there haven't been, until they started looking at their genes and their changes in their genome, there were really not very good explanations for it. But now we're beginning to understand it a little bit better. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Then if I can just ask a little bit of a follow-up here. So does that change in the DNA, I assume that probably plays a role in human evolution too, right?
Well, yeah, I think it will, as long as whatever changes have been done while you are still producing children. Okay, in other words, what you're sending into the future. Okay, let's say that you have children, and then you have some huge traumatic happens in your life, or something changes really dramatically and it affects your DNA, but you don't have any more children, then that's not going to go forward, okay, because that change is going to die with you. All right, so it's the changes that actually occur while you're still sending DNA into the future that actually participate in evolution.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thanks, Marjorie.
Okay.
Thanks. Josh?
My question was about blood types. Since I always have a hard time understanding it. And some people say like the endemic blood brought negative rhesus factors here. I always wonder what's the significance of the positive and negative blood. Is one better than the other, or in a layman's, explanation for people like me, related to the Urantia book, it feels like they kind of open that up.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't state in the Urantia book that it necessarily had anything to do with blood types per se. It just said that it's genetic inheritance. Okay. With the Human Genome Project, or with all the 23andMe and all these others, as we get more and more data and we track things back, we might find that blood type had a lot more to do with when the 7 different colored races suddenly appeared. Maybe it had something to do with that. I don't know, because it doesn't really speak to that in the thing. As far as like being, a positive or a negative, that it doesn't really speak to that. I would think that whatever was to be given by Adam and Eve would have been considered a positive uplift, okay, into the human genome. I don't think being Rh negative or Rh positive, as they talk about. It could have been an environmentally adaptive thing somewhere back in our evolutionary period, maybe even prior to Andon Infanta. It could, but definitely since Andon Infanta, that there could have been an environmental pressure. I'll give you an example of one. It doesn't have to do with blood type as much, but I can give you an example of when an environmental pressure caused something, or this is the current thought. In the area of cystic fibrosis, there is a protein that's called the cystic fibrosis transmembrane protein, or CFTR, or receptor is what it's referred to. It is a channel that actually, in your cells, it fluxes chloride. It keeps a good chloride balance across your cells. And when this protein is either misfolded or cannot behave as a channel like it's supposed to flux the chloride, then you develop cystic fibrosis. And current theory is that why did this? It's the most common genetic defect known in the Caucasian population worldwide. And the question is, why did this happen? How did we suddenly develop something that was? It turns out that you have to look back at cholera. And they think that what it was that people that actually survived earlier cholera epidemics changed their CFTR so they didn't excrete all their chloride and it didn't kill them. They didn't die, because what happens is that you excrete all your electrolytes when you get a really bad case of that. And so the environmental pressure to save somebody to prevent death from cholera was to change the CFTR protein. Unfortunately, it changed it a little too much, to the point that it kept evolving and changing, and it went down sort of a bad pathway. And then that's how cystic fibrosis became, I guess you would say, endemic in the Caucasian genome, and is the most common genetic disease known today. So, what actually caused the difference between Rh negative and Rh positive? I'm not a hematologist. I'm sure the hematologist could give you a much better answer than I could. But that's an idea about how we ought to look at how things that we see, that certain pressures cause things. And it may not be the pressure that we think. Who would think that a disease would make a protein fold so differently or be unreactive? But it was actually under that pressure a life-saving mutation that occurred. So, but I'm sorry, Josh, I can't answer your question any better. I could research it for you, but that's it. I'm sorry.
I was just thinking one day we might all be actually one blood. It's kind of.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It would certainly make life a lot easier.
Right?
If we all were, that's for sure.
Yeah, we all inherit it eventually. That's why I was wondering, like, what is it going to be? All negative, all positive? Does it matter? Right. Anyway, thank you.
Okay.
Bennett.
Thank you, Marjorie. Some of you know that I'm an identical twin, or you do now. And a few comments about that and a few experiences. One is you realize early on that there's two of you, only it's not you. Personalities are distinct. And we never have the experience of being what a single person has. Just as a single person, and you kind of have, you can imagine, but you kind of have to be a twin to have the experience literally thousands of times of people not understanding what it's like to be a twin. In terms of heredity, I don't know the exact percentage of how much we're identical, but we are identical. We've both had adult chronic illnesses. I have typically followed him by 2 or 3 years in most of those, but not all of those, which one would have to assume is probably more environmental or perhaps behavioral than anything else, but that remains the fact. We thought a lot alike. According to my mom, we had our own language until a certain point, I suppose, when we went to school in kindergarten. But lastly, I'll just leave you with one of the most perplexing thoughts. I was at a healthcare conference many years ago. This young man walking by said, he butted into the conversation and said, "Did I understand that you're an identical twin?" And I was mildly intolerant. Yes, I'm having a conversation here with my friends. And he said, "But there's a question I've always wanted to ask." And I said, "Okay, go ahead, please." And he said, "Do you ever get confused about which one you are?" And of the thousands of potential reactions that I had in my mind, violence was at the top of the list. But I simply said, "Thank you, goodbye." And we all had our own little laugh about that. But I think it exemplifies there's just a natural shield. And in the universe, we find that repeated on many levels. The book talks about it as the discretion of God, and that there are many things that we're allowed to learn. And there are some things that we never get the chance, some worlds we never are allowed to visit, some items that we don't get to pursue.
Thanks, Bennett. Halbert.
Recently, I started to do some research on melanin because melanin relates to skin, eye, and hair colorations. I got educated about how when you're covered with hair, you don't need much pigment. That is, your skin isn't going to be so exposed to the sun that it might cause sunburn or a problem of one type or another. And so there can be some tendency for the human body or any body, I should say, any mammal, to not waste energy on producing melanin when it's just not needed to protect the skin in any particular way. So that came up as sort of the first consideration chronologically. But then I was soon confronted with research by Bruce Lawn and a issue related to the microcephalin gene that which is responsible for brain growth. And he dated that to approximately 37,000 years ago, which was just too cool, just perfect for us, of course. How shows it? He got in a bunch of trouble because this also related to how basically white genetics spread through the world. And in the wake of all of that, I noticed that when it came to things like eye and hair color, which should date back to 37,000 years ago, just like that microcephalin gene, they'll go back 10,000 years. Maybe you find a little bit about 15,000 years, but I'm just expecting that geneticists should be showing how hair colorations and eye colorations go back to 37,000 years ago, and they just won't do it. And the lack of research is just extraordinary. I think we're dealing with a profession that learned from Bruce Lawn. He was very renowned in the field of genetics, and everybody in that field, I presume, generally speaking, heard what happened to his work and his reputation for, what he discovered and how he had to redirect himself.
Thanks, Albert. It's interesting for sure. Jerry or Rob or both.
I was wondering, the human genome now is clearly under a great deal of scientific investigation. I imagine that it contains all of the elements that led to the 7 Sangric races and the violet race. Do you suppose that this suggestion in the Urantia book that we need to drive our own blending of the races because the social structures that would have done that are non-existent. Do you suppose it's possible that we'll identify all the markers that made up the 7 Sangrics and the violet race, put them together, and blend our own final mixed races in the distant future? It seems to me we're well along that path already.
Well, I think that's somewhat of a loaded say. I think will we ever get back to looking at the genetics into those? I think yes, we will eventually get back there. I think we're talking about quite a bit of genetic research to go back that far, and we need more people who share their genomes, and out there. The more data we have, the more you can do it, and I think that we can do it. But the thing about going forward and making our own amalgamation of the races, as they say, we have to one race, one language, one religion, one government to approach light and life. Society isn't ready for talk in that area. I don't think. Okay, you have to realize that even when CRISPR was unfolded, which is a technology that in the past we looked at treating diseases and it stopped with the individual. Now we're looking at being able to take and make a change in a germ cell line that we can send into the future. Okay, so because that's such a societal, ethical, moral issue, a huge conference was convened by David Baltimore in Asilomar to discuss about how we use this technology. Like all things, particularly after you studied the Urantia book, you see that evolution of everything, society, morals, ethics, everything, is slow but sure. We take steps back, but we do move forward. I see this thing about us manipulating genomes. We're not at a point where we want everybody, it looks at it as a eugenics. They use the word eugenics as making, more brilliant, more powerful, more whatever individual, the Superman or Superwoman. Society's not going to go there. It's going to be a very gradual thing. First, we're going to try to figure out how to approach every genetic disease that we have identified. I think that's going to be our first. Not to say that in the background there are not people that are going to be working on how to extend people's lives, make them all beautiful, or what, all these other sort of things that people seem to be really, want to spend their time and energy and money on. But, what we need to do first, I think, or what we will do first, because there is the will to save and prevent people from dying of illnesses that we perceive that we can treat and have influence on. I mean, you as a physician realize that it's important when you can identify an illness. It's like when we identified diabetes and we identified a way to treat it, then we treat it so people don't have to die of it when they're a child anymore, okay? So it's the same thing with cystic fibrosis. Now it's a disease of adulthood. And there are people that have certain forms of it that are totally treatable now. So these are the things that we have, we will be manipulating the genome at first. When we get beyond that point, the society and the morals and the ethics will have evolved again. And hopefully we will have a more spiritual approach to how we deal with humanity and the resources that are available to it at that time in a more effective and, for lack of a better word, godlike manner, in that not God that we can control it, but God that we have total love for it. That we want to save people from suffering. We want people to have better lives. So yes to that, we will, I think, ultimately figure out which came with each one of the Sangats, and probably what we might be able to piece together the some of the violet. I don't know. We didn't get a whole lot of it, so it might be somewhat difficult to do that. But how we move forward on the other realms is going to be, I think, more about how society develops, and then the science may be there, but society may not be willing to use it. So I don't know if that speaks to your question or not, but I hope so.
Hey, Margie, very good job today.
Thank you.
If that's not being judgmental. Well, Phil Calabrese influenced me with one of his writings that I don't even know if he remembers back that far because he's done so many things since, but he wrote something called The Coming Validation of the Urantia Papers. Mm-hmm. And it listed a lot of different elements of science that tend to lean towards saying that the Urantia book is valid. And the thing that I've been finding myself is that the not only can science validate the Urantia book can validate science if you have that particular point of view that the Urantia book is an accurate description of the way the things are in the universe. And I don't know, but maybe you can riff on that a little bit.
I mean, we're beginning to in cosmology. I'm not a cosmologist, but I love to read about it. I mean, a lot of the young cosmologists are rejecting the Big Bang. They're just saying no. And so so that's a whole paradigm shift. And so I think there are areas in the book where to get to that, there are going to be paradigms. Have to be total paradigm shifts within the science. It's terribly interesting.
Thanks. Andrew, were you trying to raise your hand?
You read all about the cosmic microwave background being the smoking gun of the Big Bang. And I'm wondering, first of all, I never quite understood why it was the smoking gun for the Big Bang in all the articles I read. But nonetheless, I'm wondering how the Urantia book would account for the microwave background in the rotational model, if that's something anybody can speak on. So thank you.
Well, Phil may actually be able to Phil or Nigel, one could speak to that better than me. Phil, you want to take that one on?
Yeah, I would. The Urantia book also says that the intergalactic space is not empty. It has something like 1 electron per, I think it's cubic inch, or And that could be the reason why we see a certain amount of radiation uniformly coming, so-called cosmic background radiation of the Big Bang. It could be other explanations, and one is that there's this thin amount of material coming from everywhere, and of course, if there's an electron, then it can radiate every once in a while. If it gets hit by or captures some light, it will then re-radiate. So I think that that's one explanation for the cosmic background radiation. And of course, the other explanation is the redshift, which again can be reinterpreted in various ways. And the Urantia book itself says that we're misinterpreting the redshift as being recession velocity to the point that that we've got it, according to Hubble's work, the further out you go, the faster it's expanding, and if you project that backwards, you end up with a cosmos that started 13.8 billion years ago, or a little less. And as you pointed out, the younger cosmologists are having more and more trouble buying that, because we're finding at the supposed initiation, or the first origin, a few 100 million years after it, we're finding very well-formed galaxies that have a lot of heavy material, and there's just no way for that to have formed so quickly. So the Big Bang is on very shaky ground right now.
Okay, thank you, Phil.
Thanks, Phil.
Yep.
Michael?
In response to David, when I was in my 20s and early in my spiritual quest, had a friend, a chemist, an agnostic chemist, who said to me, I found this book. The science was accurate before its time. Therefore, the legend must be true as well. And then instant validation, but we're just spoken. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, it's there are quite a few people that have actually come to the book through the science, in it, and so yes. Okay, now Phil's gonna raise his hand again. Go, Phil.
I just wanted to say, I had my hand up earlier. I wanted to say that I will, at the symposium, not only talk about quantum entanglement, but I'm going to review a paper that will be an appendix, which is a statistical test of the hypothesis that the Urantia book was authored by human beings. And I won't go through all the examples, but I want to, and I will go through how that test was constructed. What are the population? What's the sample? What are the aspects that allow it to be simplified to basically a binary distribution, and showing that the probability of human authorship based upon the writers at the time, before 1955, is extremely unlikely. but it's, I'll have to go through what the population is and what are the simplifications without actually going through the examples. They are in the appendix, and I'm hoping that people will eventually get to read that. So
That's very interesting, Phil. I take it that you're talking about something different than the analysis maybe we've heard about before in terms of the number of authors, right? Like, I think people even a while ago has said, look, it's got characteristics. It's not all written by the same person, but it sounds like you're talking about something more complex and a little bit deeper.
Yes, I'm not talking about the idea that it was written by different authors, which I agree, obviously, because I believe that Urantia book is what it purports to be. But
right.
No, I can say this, that the population will be all the reversals of science since 1955, such as, finding all those hundreds of millions of galaxies that the Urantia book predicts, but we didn't discover until the 1990s. That was not predicted. That was, in fact, the opposite was predicted. And, the age of the Sierra Mountains and plate tectonics, all of these things that were once thought one way and they changed it. If the Urantia book says something about that, then that becomes one of the possible examples. And what I end up with is about 47 cases, and the Urantia book gets about 40 right, according to contemporary science, and about 7 wrong, which is has a probability of about 1 trillion of being by accident.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah,
remember Phil is a mathematician, so he goes by the numbers, so we can count that the numbers are correct. Okay. I always count on Phil for that.
I had a question. If you know, Marjorie, if anybody knows, I was always I'm always looking for these things too on a amateur level, obviously, but you mentioned Lucy and all the different fossils and skeletons and hominids that modern science has identified, and of course we know I think all the radiocarbon dating is a little bit suspect, right? So that none of that quite works with the numbers in the book, and I just don't have any concept of whether these remains that that we found, that they say, well, that's 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, whatever. Is that all? I mean, by the calendar, that would all be pre and an infanta, but the way the book describes the creatures pre and an infanta doesn't seem really, in my mind, to match up with that. And might these be post and an infanta? Modern science has got all these evolutionary steps to what they call Homo sapiens sapiens, but mapping that onto the Urantia book, I think it's anybody's guess. Can you shed any light on that, or does anybody else have any thought on that?
The thing is that they're finding hominids all over in different areas that we know that they were developing, but you've got to remember that Lucy did the paradigm shift because they used to think that they had to have a fully developed brain before they stood up.
Okay.
That was the old way of thinking. But once they got to Lucy, and then looked later, they realized that when you look at the drawings of what they say her skull looked like, she has, she looks like a microcephalic person. Nothing back here to amount to anything. but she obviously could walk upright and walk quite well. Okay, and so that was a paradigm shift in archaeology, thinking about what came first. Just like Göbekli Tepe has done somewhat of a paradigm shift because they thought that agriculture had to come before they, humans would build structures. They had to have, and so that's been another huge paradigm shift in archaeology. Like all science, I think, as we gain more and more data, and as our dating abilities to do things become more and more refined, I think they'll eventually, just like the question that Rob asked about looking at the genome, I think eventually, as more and more data comes in, we'll be able to build that timeline. You see these things in archaeology, like the one that always gets me is the one of the horse. The what actually turned into a horse. Started out with something that's like 6 inches tall, but then they show you a whole progression of what they actually did. Well, in humans, in us, we have not filled everything in by any stretch of the imagination, but we'll get better and better. Also remember that if there is, and the techniques are getting better and better at recovering ancient DNA out of an unerupted tooth bud, out of a skeleton of a child or whatever. Those techniques are going to allow us to begin to fill in that diagram on 23andMe that tells you where you came from and who migrated where and all that. And I think eventually you will be able to overlay what we know in the Urantia book to to that. But right now it's just basically a lack of data more than anything else is what is the way I kind of view it, as a very simplistic scientist who is not an archaeologist nor a cosmologist or a mathematician, I might add. So
Right.
Anyway, okay.
Thanks. No, well, yeah, it's like so many other things, and our data points are so sparse, right?
Right,
I mean,
right.
you happen to get one person who was walking through a mud pit, in one place, it'd be the stupidest thing in the world to assume that was the first or only person, right? Anyway, sorry. Actually, let me let Mark go, and then we'll come back to you, Josh, since you already spoke. Mark?
Yeah, one of the things I think is really holding back a lot of scientific discovery is not understanding the purposeful nature of creation and recognizing the authority of the universal Father. And, there's no, when you look at all these scientific pieces, you can't really stitch them together until you understand, why are we here? Why are mortals? What's the purpose of Urantia? What's the purpose of our being? So it's really an embrace of the authority of the universal Father and the spiritual purpose of mankind. And I think once that occurs, the discoveries will really explode. Because right now people are probing for what's out there in space, and we don't know this, and there's no intent and purpose. So it's the faith journey that we're on that's going to help us discover more of the physical aspects of reality.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. That's a good point. And even if it doesn't have the full religious element, just the idea of either a goal or a beginning, right, in a force, and obviously positing that because you don't observe it, but that's just as legitimate as positing some of the other things that are driving the current confusion, right? if
Well,
you say there's no goal or there's no purpose, you've ruled out hypotheses that would explain things better, right?
it's really understanding the Most High's rule in the kingdom of men. And that rule may be not revealing all the little scientific secrets that are out there. Maybe that rule is the jurisdiction of the Most Highs. I think when you grasp that concept, and it's, in the Christian religion, it's embracing Jesus, Jesus in your life, which is an embrace of a divine authority. And, I think that's the key thing that has to happen before we really make good progress.
Okay. Thanks. Jeff, let me turn to you.
One of the things that was striking to me is that the Urantia books talk about biological change includes macromutation. And because macromutation is so improbable, it seems to have been bypassed by self-respecting scientists because it lends such plausibility to teleological accounts of this. To what Mark was saying, I would say there's between the recognition of a purposive creator and the sort of mechanical aspect of science, there's a philosophical and scientific heritage that I trace from Plato all the way to present time, so to speak, at the time that I was writing this. And I think that intermediate territory is worth exploring. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, look, up until 150 years ago, I think you have to get to Nietzsche before you get that. All these people who are doing scientific discoveries were driven by that, being comfort with that purpose, right? It was not weird to say, how did God put this together, and then go look for the science. That's a very, very modern concept that we expressly don't do that.
When it talks about sudden things appearing that you're referring to, science doesn't, I think, is not at the point where it is going to look at those things, because we know that in the lab, big changes in genomes usually end in lethality in many cases, or in really not beautiful things. Okay, and so you change stuff in very incremental ways. Now that's the limit of science at the moment. Okay, not to say that as science develops, that the look at large changes of this sudden changes in the genome that allows expression in a new or in an environment is not going to be part of science in the future. I think it probably will, but it is not current.
We just have a few more minutes. Josh?
What's your take on the aliens are here? They're coming. The spacecraft are out there. If you go to certain mainstream channels, it's like aliens everywhere, right? Just what's your opinion on that, Marjorie?
I will say that I continually withhold on that. I mean, I have very good friends that are ufologists, and are very much into that, and I applaud their work in that particular area. It's just not mine. Would I like to think that it's that? Sure, I read science fiction as a kid, and the idea that they're wandering around would make me really happy. But there's, as far as a scientist is concerned, I'm going to continually, kind of continue to withhold a little bit on it. But the idea of it, yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, how about you, Tim? What's your 2 bits on that?
I again, it's interesting, and I think it's a great expression of sort of human concepts of things and exploring those things. I personally can't reconcile it with the evolutionary plan in the Urantia book, at least in any way that I understand it, right?
Yeah,
That
me
there
either.
would be this,
Yeah.
the only thing I can think of is that there are other nearby rebellion spheres like us who just happen to be a little more advanced, and like, you know, we're hopping over to them or they're hopping over to us and we're all confused. But I think that's highly unlikely as well. That's just my personal take. But the aliens have, you know, whispered in my ear that it's time to stop because they don't like us talking about them too much.